on Asset.com. The issue was we were doing all these, Jared and I were doing all these HTML newsletters that, as I'm sure you guys know, you still use all the old code and everything like that, trying to be processed in tons of different email browsers, either on the desktop or through like Gmail or something like that. So we ran into quite a few issues back and forth between them, and so I talked with Tony and did a bunch of research, and this seemed like the best one to fix the issue that we were having. So it does quite a bit more than just what we use it for, which is basically just to check to make sure before we send it to the vendor that everything looks right, so we don't get a pushback from the vendor to Tony or Naledi over at Earth's Best. So it just makes it go a lot smoother for them, which makes them happier. So that's good. Um, so it's really straightforward. It's very easy to use. You just come in here and log in. I don't know why it keeps doing this. All right, and on here you can see all the different tests for all the different newsletters that we've done for them. There's two different ones in there. So it keeps all your results going back for as long as you've done it. As you can see, you can go back here to the very first ones we tried to do back in August. Um, um, yeah, so basically what we're using it for is just email testing and email preview. So when you come in here, you just come in here and select email preview, and it gives you this subject line. So if we just do code review test for, all right, and then it gives you 4 different options on how you want to do it. If you're hosting it somewhere on an open URL, obviously you can do that as a zip file or send your email. Since we're not sending anything, I always just cut and paste the HTML in here. So this is a template Earthbest's been using since before I got here, so they haven't really changed anything. But through this and through Jared, we were able to get it with very few flaws at all. So it's great. It gives you a bunch of settings. You can save your content settings for next time. So that way, every time you go in there, it's exactly the same. You don't have to keep on doing stuff. There is a spam test, but since we don't actually send it to anybody, I don't mess with that. And then, yeah, you just run the acid test, and it's going to sit here and give you your previews in all the different clients that you've selected, and these can be changed. This is a list that I got directly from the vendor that does the email processing for Hain Celestial and Earth's Best. So that's why these are here, but you can change any of those that you want to. This takes a little while since it's got to load all this different stuff, and it actually sends it to their servers. It opens it up and gives you a screenshot. So I already went ahead and did it. This is what the code looks like when it's finished. So you can see it gives you all of these, which is kind of helpful because you can just at a quick glance make sure everything's where it is. But obviously, you need to look lower, especially when the page cuts it off. So when you open it up, it shows you what it would look like if you actually had AOL mail for some reason. Sorry. um, yeah, so here it is, and obviously I created a few simple errors that could be fixed really quickly, but obviously, this is way over to the left, and this shouldn't have a border around it. What it's extremely useful for is actually like alignment issues or what kind of styles you can use and what you can't. That'll still work on all the different email clients. And then you can come in here and just click through all the different browsers, and it'll keep on showing you what each one looks like, so you can make sure it's correct across these different ones. Right. And then if you want to go back, you just hit the summary and it takes you back here. So, and it's almost always the same 2 or 3 that we have issues with. So it's almost always Internet Explorer 8 on Windows, which I'm sure is no shock to anybody here. So yeah, but go down to some of these.
Is it usually a particular mail client on IE8, or is it just anything with Internet Explorer 8?
It's like let me go back real quick and check it. It's AOL. These two right here are always almost the AOL on Internet Explorer 8 and 9 are almost
Okay.
always messed up. And then there's another one, Outlook. Yeah, um, Outlook, Windows 8 and 9 both mess up quite a bit. So we actually don't, these are the desktop servers down here, and we actually rarely have any issues with those, which is nice. It's almost always specifically a web browser, some kind of email client they're using in a web browser. Um, so yeah, and you can, they just have like lots of little useful options. Like you can break it down like, oh, it's only the desktop, stuff like that. And oh, I don't know why it keeps going there. So it also does a code analysis for you of what it thinks is wrong. Um, so that's good that we only have that one in there. It always kills all these things. Um, Not kills them, but it always calls errors on a lot of the stuff that the like. I'm not sure what these are called actually, um, but anytime these are like required code elements from the vendor, so they actually add them in there and they send it back to us, and we just leave them in there. We don't change them, even though it throws errors all the time. Um, so yeah, and then yes, so all I would do is go back in here and fix the code, which was obviously we don't want the border. So we'll change this to 0. We want, if we looked at this again, obviously these aren't lining up correctly. Um, so, and unfortunately with the email, what I've learned from these email things is that a lot of it depends. I mean, it's just so like you almost have to take the lowest common denominator throughout a lot of them. And we also, they usually like Naledi test it like by looking at it through through the web browser instead of an email client, which obviously it's not always going to show up the same. And I'll show you how you can actually share your results here in a second. Um, so if you want to do this again, you just hit new test, and you can actually put your code right in here. You don't even have to go back to the start. So I'm just going to make this right so those social buttons show up correctly. All right, you submit it and it just runs it automatically again. Um, and I already did this one as well. So you can see here, if you went back to the ones that had problems, because even that border 3 is not necessarily going to show up on all the clients. So now the border's gone and these are aligned the way they should be. So it's like, all right, we've checked all these. I usually go through each and every single one before I send it back to them, just again to keep problems out of the way from the going back and forth between them and the vendor, because they won't just let me communicate with the vendor. So if this is all good, then I always just go in here and hit share. It just gives you you can download all the stuff. I usually just take this URL, I post it in Basecamp to Tony and Jared and Naledi so that they can all look at it and make feedback or comments. And then this also, and it also has like a zip file that we have to send them. So this really helps us out with showing whenever they actually show the people at Earth's Best the results, they can say, well, here's what it's actually going to look like through all these different clients, and they can see um, the different previews of each one. So, and your share, if you actually hit into the share one, it builds it much quicker for the client, so they don't have to wait on it forever like I do as the developer. And they can come in here and they have the same access that we do to see everything. Um, and it just takes away the new stuff, like I'm going to do a new test or anything like that. So it's a really good interface. It's very easy, and you can do it over and over and over again very quickly with very few clicks. So it works out really well.
So if
So
you make a fix and then rerun the tests, do they just refresh the share link you already gave them, or do they need a new link?
yeah, you have to send them a new one.
Okay,
So yeah, so yeah, and I also keep it that way. I think you could just do what I just did a minute ago, which was, you just hit new test and throw this in there, and they can probably use the same link. The problem is that Tony and the lady want everything under versions so they can see the differences.
cool.
So when I do all the different tests, I always put version whatever the date, and yeah, you can see in here. So we got the pediatrician newsletter. So the year and then the test of which how many tests I did on each version to get it right, and that's also for me to keep everything straight. Um, so yeah, here's another one that we did, and this is a good example of the lowest common denominator. And you'll see how a lot of these show up differently, like this one. And again, obviously it's in our Explorer 9. So it cuts off stuff and pushes it to the middle, and then like it leaves this big gap at the bottom. But because of the design, this is the best. Like I said, this is the lowest common denominator, and for most of their clients, it works out fine. And we haven't heard any complaints or anything from the vendor for this one. So,
So
and this is the first month.
in that case, you were basically like aware that there were like some subtle issues, but it's like it's not really possible to fix it in every client, so you let it go, or was there some change that you guys made to correct that?
Um, I would present it to the client as in, you know, is this worth me spending the time to fix this whenever it's already so close on all of them? Um, and tell them exactly what's wrong is usually how I handle it, and then we go back in and fix it if they want it to be fixed or want it to be even straighter and stuff like that. A lot of times they don't give us the feedback until like the day before it's supposed to go out, and so they're like, oh, you know, this would be nice if it was over just a little bit or something like that. But there's just not enough time to fix it before they actually have to send it out to all their subscribers.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I mean, obviously we you know do get it as perfect as possible on as many clients as we possibly can. So the only issues I've had with this are, and here you can see too, like where these clients strip out that background image that they made us use, but it still everything else still shows up correctly. So that's really nice. Um, the only issues I've really run into is that sometimes you get this right you see right here, this Yahoo Firefox 21 in Windows, like it just doesn't load the screenshot. And so if you want to get all of them, sometimes you have to go back in and keep running it a few times to actually get them all to come up. So yeah.
Hey Dick, what's have you messed with that optimization tab, or what is that?
Yeah, these are the, I was gonna, let me go back here. Yeah, I have not messed with this one. So I know that like I've looked at this stuff and went through it. Like you can do a web page preview instead, and it'll actually give you some kind of the same test results on there for any web page. And then they also have the email analytics. If we were actually sending this out, we could actually use this whole system to do it all. So, but yeah, it does do the code analysis, and it actually has a spot in here somewhere where you can actually, if it's not working right, you can send it to them, and they'll fix it and send it back to you. So. There's also these developer tools, which if you're, you know, just haven't touched HTML editors, or I mean, HTML newsletters for this at all for a while, it's really nice because they have put together, mainly they've put together all the CSS that'll work and the CSS and the HTML that won't work. I mean, that will work. Sorry, I'm so used to stuff not working in newsletters. But here it gives you all your tags and attributes that'll work across all the most popular email clients that are used. And then it shows you all your different CSS tags that you can use that will be universally accepted. So that's a good little, um, you know, hints and tricks, I guess, while you're doing it to help out. So yeah.
Oh, okay, so this is actually spelling out the differences they detected.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So the more time we have, you know, the more obviously that we can go through and do this different stuff. But so these are all conversions, so I'm not gonna hit one of those right now in case it messes something up. But yeah, I mean that's basically it. It's got a lot of different ways to get to the same information, but yeah, here's one where it doesn't pull the background in for whatever reason. I think that's because that specific HTML tag is not supported in Outlook. So yeah, it made a world of difference though. We haven't had any complaints and very few back and forths since we've done this since August, and so that's been a great, I think, just a weight off Tony and the lady that they don't have to mess with this anymore, especially when they have to show the clients and it's right or wrong. It's always right now before we send it to them, so it's great. And all this information is in all the login information and URLs are in Basecamp. So if anybody wants to use it or mess with it, they can easily do so.
That's
So is
very
there any other
cool.
questions or anything? Like I said, sorry, it's pretty it's very straightforward, so it doesn't take that long to show what it does. So
No, that's
yeah,
awesome. Like next time I'm doing an email template, this will save me a ton of time. So no, that's
yeah, it really does. Yeah. So yeah, here's that
Yeah, I think
email
this is
output.
really neat. Thanks for sharing, Nick.
Yeah, anytime. This is the optimization thing I was saying, where you can send your HTML to them and they actually work on it. So I don't know if they actually work on it. I have a feeling it's just a program that tries to fix it or whatever. But
yeah, it's still pretty cool.
yeah,
Well, it's really feature rich. I like reminds me of Browser Stack.
right. Yeah, yeah. And there's a huge, like I said, it has like over 68, like just like it says right here. Like it has 68 variations on the email clients and mobile devices. So as we start to move more and more towards mobile devices and newsletters, it's something that I think we'll already have the tool in place to accommodate that. So
Does
I
it
haven't heard
have
any clients.
does it have
Oh, go
support
ahead.
for things like the native mail app on iPad?
Let me see here.
Like I know Browser Stack added that recently, where you can basically do like mobile VMs to test, but I didn't see that in here.
So here's everything you can test. So it has the
Okay,
whole this whole mobile section, this whole desktop section, and then all the web browsers. So
cool.
you can do all of them if you want to. I did this where um, it specifically shows exactly what their vendor is sending out. So like basically what I found out what their standards were from the vendor, and then I matched this to those standards. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it
Is
did.
this the mobile the
Yeah,
iPad?
that's very
Yeah.
helpful.
Okay.
I think that's all I had. So if no one else has questions, I guess we'll just go ahead and wrap up. Cool. Well, thanks again, Nick.
Yeah. Anytime.
I think this is really helpful and just so much better than the ways that I've had to do this in the past. So
Yeah, it makes a huge difference when you're actually working in it. So
cool.
yeah, it makes a huge difference when you're actually.
All right. Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Bye.
Bye.